This program is brought to you by the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, a nonprofit organization dedicated to sharing with the community the many benefits of a vegetarian diet. 3 monthly meetings include vegetarian experts found locally and on the mainland, quick and easy cooking demonstrations, and healthful and delicious food samples. Members enjoy an informative quarterly newsletter, social activities, and discounts at many vegetarian-friendly restaurants and health food stores. For an application, call 944-8344. That's 944-8344. Or visit our website at www.vsh.org. vsh.org.
Tonight we have with us Agatha and Calvin Thrash, two medical doctors from Alabama on their way home from a short trip to Thailand. They are the director and president, respectively, of the Uchi Pines Institute, a rural health conditioning center which they founded in Cairo, Alabama. Here they practice preventive medicine and do health education. Together, Drs. Thrash have co-authored 13 books. Among them are Nutrition for Vegetarians, Home Remedies, Hypertension, and Diabetes and the Glycemic Syndrome. Dr. Agatha Thrash will do the speaking tonight. Her good husband is listening with us. Dr. Thrash earned her medical degree from the Medical College of Georgia. She is certified by the American Board of Pathology. For 12 years, she was medical examiner for Muskogee County, Georgia, working with the coroner's office. For 9 years, she was the public health officer in Russell County, Alabama, working with the prenatal clinic. For 7 years, she taught anatomy and physiology at Columbus State University in Georgia. She has had a full career in private practice and on the staff of several hospitals. She is a syndicated columnist who writes articles for newspapers in several states. She has appeared often on weekly radio and television programs and has lectured all over the U.S. and Canada, as well as around the world. Dr. Agatha Thrash has a lot to teach us. Her topic tonight is how to use foods as medicines. Please join us in welcoming Dr. Agatha Thrash.
I wanted to make certain I knew how long I was to speak. You know how speakers sometimes don't have good terminal facilities. And I wanted to make certain that I didn't go too far over time. And I think that I'll start talking with you tonight about one of the great wonders of a human body. And while it isn't exactly on my topic, I think you will see why I'm presenting this to you. Because in the first place, it is a very fine organ. You will see a section here of human lung. This is an actual section. This is a normal lung. Now, you won't be able to tell too much, and this part out here is just the supporting structure. But the lung itself is right in here. This is the functioning part. Here are the bronchi and some blood vessels and lymphatics. And here's a little lymph node right here. We have a cluster of lymph nodes in this area. And if you will look very closely, you will be able to see that this part has a very fine sponge structure. So that if you, especially I think you can see it right in here and right in here, and of course up in here. And if we are aware of this, we will take very good care of the lungs. The lungs function for us best at a little bit of a warm temperature, about like we have here in Hawaii now, and a little moist, but not too moist, nor too dry. That's the way the lungs function best, to give the best exchange of gases across membranes that are only one cell layer thick. extremely thin layers. And if we breathe in something from the air in seconds, that is in the blood. And so we need to be aware of that. Now, let me show you the next one, and I will not have to be so careful to show you in this one that there is a sponge structure here, but it is not a fine sponge. You can see there are holes in many places, even clusters of holes. This is the lung of a smoker. Smoking is not only not good for the lungs, it isn't good for the blood vessels, nor the heart, it isn't good for the pancreas, nor the stomach. There is no organ of the body that we can say smoking has even a neutral effect on it. It's either negative or extremely bad, as it is here for the lungs. This disease, this is emphysema, and this disease is a cruel disease. It is the cruel disease of smoking, because when you get the emphysema, you could wish you were dead, but you cannot die. Lung cancer will kill you when you're essentially dead, but emphysema will let you live while you're functionally almost dead. And so I call it the cruel disease. That's a white blood cell count below 5,000, 5,500. What will make you do that? It is the cleanliness of your diet. And the more vegetarian you are, the lower your white count will be. So if you're a chico-fisho vegetarian, it will not be quite so clean as if you're a vegan vegetarian. And I heartily recommend that for you. We already have expressed here tonight some of the reasons for that, some of the ecological reasons for that. And I would like to emphasize also the health reasons for that. Certainly I'm very happy every day when I have my meal that no little animal has to suffer to give me a meal. And how can you find out if it is below 5,500? It is by a laboratory test. This brings up another big subject, and that is you need to have your laboratory test in your hand every year. If you have your laboratory test done, your blood work done every year, have a copy of this. You alone have the time and the great interest to follow along your various test results year by year. While your doctor might do it, it is highly unlikely because doctors are not doctors for health maintenance. That is not what doctors' function is. Doctors' function is for disease cure. That's what they were trained for. It is unfair, actually, to even expect them to help you with health maintenance. That is your responsibility. You should take that responsibility. And I think it's sad that the doctor alone can make the order for you that will enable you to get the laboratory testing, since that's information that you need. So don't leave the office without it. Keep a nice file, and there are several things that you need to be checking every single year. And one of those is, what is my white cell count doing? All right, the next one is drink enough water so that you can keep your urine pale. How much is that? For the person in what we might call the prime of life, we might say that maybe 8 glasses of water a day might be sufficient. But if you're more than the age of 50, then you need to add sequentially more and more water, because the skin is thinner, the kidneys are not quite so efficient as they once were, and now you're losing more fluid than you did, and you need to replace this with besides that, other systems are not so brisk now as they once were. Perhaps the liver and the pancreas may not be so brisk. And so you need to compensate for that by drinking plenty of water. Our tests show, and I hope to get to this if I study about strokes, but let me just make sure that I get this in while I'm talking here about water. If you get up to the bathroom at night, while you're up, drink about 5 to 8 ounces of water while you're up, and A recent study was published showing that those who do that will have about a 67% reduced likelihood in whatever category of stroke risk you are. You will have about a 67% reduction in your risk of strokes just by doing that one good health habit. So write that down as something that you must do. The next thing is regularity in all things. And I wish I had the rest of the week to talk with you about that. But you know that you get hungry on time if you're accustomed to being hungry on time. You even want to get out and get some fresh air and exercise on time or at a certain time if you're accustomed to doing that. You get sleepy on time if your body knows that you're going to be going to sleep on time. Now let me tell you the underlying significance of that. There are many of our organs that do not wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock. They have a timed schedule that they have their maximum intensity of activity. Let's just take the thyroid gland as an example. The thyroid gland is awakened every morning by the activity of adrenocortico-stimulating hormone, ACTH, which wakes up also the adrenals. And the adrenals then add their bit to the pituitary's function to make the thyroid wake up also. So the thyroid wakes up at about 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Adrenals wake up. If you're accustomed to getting up about 6, your adrenals wake up about 6. But your pituitary wakes up about 5, about an hour later. And it has already given a little nudge to the thyroid in the ACTH. But the adrenal hormone is the one that really gives it its boost. But even then, it sort of yawns and stretches before it wakes up, and so it's about 8 or 9:30 before your thyroid fully wakes up. Now, if you are irregular in your schedule and your thyroid makes its maximum intensity at about 2 o'clock in the morning, that's when you don't want body heat. That's when you don't want an oomph to your energies. You want to sleep during that time. So it's important for you to be regular so that every morning you can put your feet on the floor with a spring in your step, and you can wake up with a smile on your face and a song on your lips and enjoying the beautiful world that our Father has given to us. I think that's worth being regular for, don't you? And then you approach life with a strong clobber so that you can approach your work with efficiency and organization and productivity. Now let's take the next one, and that's daily exercise to the point of sweating. And I don't think I'll say more about that. There is so much to be said. But I'll just go on to the next one, and that's warm arms and legs, summer and winter. In the summertime, air conditioning may make us get chilled, especially if we're out in the heat and get in a sweat. Then we get in a cold room and sit for an hour or two. We may get chilled. That weakens the effectiveness of the immune system. It promotes you're getting a sore throat or a cold and other viral infections. And the next thing is moderate sunning. Don't overdo the sunning. It can weaken the immune system. Pilots, student pilots, sit in a cockpit in simulated flight and get nauseated, motion sick, frightened, and yet they have not moved. They've only seen things on a screen that had an influence on the mind, and the mind had an influence on the body to make them sweat or be nauseated or whatever. So if you have freedom of your mind, freedom from jealousy, anxiety, remorse, guilt, those things that can develop in homes, in a family setting, or in an office setting, or in a community setting, you can develop these negative emotions that have a suppressive influence on the immune system. Unrelieved grief. Some people have unrelieved grief literally for years. They continue to almost indulge themselves with the grief over the loss of, let's say, a home or a family member or a pet. You must reinvest your affections, reinvest your time when you've had a major loss. Life is full of losses, small and great, and you must learn to roll with these punches. Always have an elevated spirit. Courage, faith, love, contentment, hope, sympathy, and a rejoicing heart. All of these are very fine for the immune system. And then daily creative expression. Some studies were done showing that human beings react very well to such things as playing a musical instrument, such things as painting, planting flowers, writing, poetry, a number of things of this nature. People respond with a heightened immune system, and we have more killer cells available. Our helper cells, the commander-in-chief in our cellular immune system, the helper cells are more vigorous and more responsive. And so live in the truth that you know. Whatever you know is truth. Do not very simple example. If you know how much to eat, don't overeat. If you know you should go out and exercise, don't sit and watch TV. Live in whatever truth you know. Don't live out of obedience to law. And reduce your stresses. What is the best way to reduce stress? Well, I'll just tell you. It is exercise. And I want you to say this little phrase after me. Exercise reduces stress. Can you say that? Exercise reduces stress. That may save your life. So that may also save your job. It may save your family. So I hope you will remember, when you're under stress, go for a walk and look at all the beautiful things of nature that have been provided for us by a loving Father. And then avoid drugs. Drugs are not just drugs that are street drugs, but drugs, and they're not just drugs that are given to us by physicians. All the drugs given to us by physicians are gentle friends, aren't they? Oh, no? No? But I'm especially talking about the drugs that you get at the corner drugstore. A lot of people think that those are very mild. They also think that the only drugs that are harmful to the body are drugs that are sold on the streets. But actually, all the drugs that doctors deal with are poisons. That's why they are prescription items. The government doesn't want the free traffic in these poisonous substances, and so they're put under a very tight control. But not tight enough. And what you should do before you take a drug is to go down to your community library, ask the librarian for the physician's desk reference, and she will, often they have it up at the front desk, she will let you look up your drug. And patients who come to me with a shoebox full of drugs, often when I go through these with them with my PDR, they say, whew, my symptoms aren't anywhere near bad enough for me to be taking that drug with all those risks. And so they quit taking the drugs. So you should do that too. First thing you do when you're offered a drug is to look it up in the PDR before you buy it, and then see if that's something that you want to take. All right, next. Next is a bit about understanding strokes. Understanding strokes. And I'm only going to talk about a couple of kinds. One is the kind that occurs from plugging up a blood vessel like this. A blood vessel, an artery that has been compromised by the accumulation of fat plaques inside of it, like cholesterol. And the other is a hemorrhage, and that is this, where a blood vessel has ruptured and made a space in the brain substance by the hemorrhage itself. Now let's go a little farther in understanding stroke. What are some of the causes of stroke? Well, smoking, alcohol and coffee and its relatives, tea, colas, and chocolate. I don't have time really to develop for you why coffee, tea, colas, and chocolate are not good for you. Now that's not herbal teas. That's the ordinary pico tea or green or black tea sold at the supermarket. But if you don't just on the face of it accept what I say about it, let me encourage you not to take it again until you have read our book called Poison with a capital C. And I think that will convince you that coffee, tea, colas, and chocolate are not friends. They are enemies. And the same is true with alcohol. Alcohol is a poison. Since it is a poison, it is discussed in pharmacology classes in medical school under the topic of toxicology. And as a physician, I do my very best not to prescribe any toxins, but my husband and I have tried to use only physiologic remedies for the last 30 years. But sometimes people don't understand that alcohol is a poison. It is a drug. But I recommend that people do as I do. Be a teetotaler. And I used to think when I indulged in alcoholic drinks that people who were teetotalers were absolutely square and totally dull. But I don't think that anymore. In fact, I think the very reverse, that now those who really enjoy life are those who don't have to have this kind of drug. A high iron content is a cause of strokes, also a cause of heart attacks. High iron, what would be high iron? For a woman, a hemoglobin level between 10.5 and 12.5 is ideal. If it gets much higher than 12.5, let's say higher than 13, she begins to feel more fatigue as the iron level goes higher. And this thing is a high homocysteine level. For my curiosity, could I just see the hands of anybody who has heard of this chemical? Okay. I'm very pleased that so many of you know about it. Homocysteine is right now in the same place that cholesterol was about 50 years ago. Many doctors had never heard of homocysteine, had never heard of cholesterol 50 years ago, or if they had heard of it, they had heard that it was of unknown significance. And until probably about 30 years ago, there were still some diehards who said cholesterol didn't really have any influence on human health and nothing to do with heart attacks. And I think one of the reasons for that was that some people do have heart attacks because of high homocysteine levels, or because of a condition that also promotes a high homocysteine level. So I recommend that you get a homocysteine level done, and that you find out if yours is above about 12. Now again, right now, just like with cholesterol, we don't know exactly what is ideal. I remember when laboratory slips carried up to 300 as the normal for cholesterol, but now it has come right on down until it is unusual to find a laboratory that gives over 200 as a normal for human beings. And generally speaking, cholesterol should be about 100 plus your age, give or take a little bit. Your triglycerides should be about the same as your age, unless you eat a lot of fruit, when it should be about 100. And being about 100, if you're a vegetarian and eat very little in the way of refined sugar products, you should keep a triglyceride level of 100 until you're 100. And you may live longer than that too if you do all these good things. Homocysteine, what can you do to bring it down if it's above 12? Well, there are several things. One is get plenty of folic acid, and in a moment I will show you where you can get good food levels of folic acid. But if your level of homocysteine is high, you probably should be taking about 800 micrograms of folic acid daily. Also, a good supplement of B6 and a good supplement of B12. Those will bring the homocysteine level down. Fevers and infections will increase your risk of stroke. Inflammations such as lupus and Crohn's disease, but any other kind of inflammatory process. Hormones such as contraceptive pills and testosterone, both women and men. And migraines, this is a rare cause of strokes, but it does slightly increase your risk of getting a stroke. And so if you have migraines, you can find out how not to have migraines, and we talk about that in our book, Food Allergies Made Simple, and that can help you a lot. Allergies, which are not just hay fever, but many different things. Now let's take a look at some high food sources of folic acid. High sources are greens and nuts. Medium sources are citrus, soy, and whole grains. Fair sources are beets and most other vegetables. So you can see that those who are on the kind of diet that we promote will have naturally a high intake of folic acid. But that may not be enough. You may be only taking about 400 micrograms per day, even on a strictly vegetarian diet where you're pushing fruits and vegetables and take no animal products of any kind. Now, some other causes of stroke. I mentioned dehydration. I have not mentioned overeating. And just after a little too ample late afternoon meal, is probably not the very best time for me to feel enthusiastic about talking about overeating, but we should always guard against overeating. Sometimes you will misjudge, and you'll be very, very hungry, things will taste very, very good, and you may misjudge, but as well as you can, do not overeat. If there is any one thing that I could assure you would prolong your life, it would be a reduction in total calories. There is so much research on that now, and so much confirmatory things that one of the things that we can be the most sure about in longevity is not overeating. Hypertension is a cause of strokes. We have a book called Natural Treatments for High Blood Pressure, and we fully discuss the subject of hypertension. Anyone who is interested in that should get our book and read it. What we have done is go through the entire world medical literature on high blood pressure and try to get every item that would be applicable to the home treatment of hypertension and put it in a book so that people who are not medical people primarily would have it available to read. High cholesterol and triglycerides, a high fatty, salty diet, acute stress and long trips, and atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation is the commonest irregularity in heartbeat in older age group. Okay, some more on stroke prevention, and this is a little elaboration on the long trips. If we take long trips, especially in an airplane, you need to remember what you can do to avoid your blood clotting inside your blood vessels. And one of those is simply to stretch. Stretch your feet up and down and tense muscles everywhere. Reach high over your head and stretch your muscles. Stand up and walk. Drink plenty of water. Often when on a transoceanic flight, people do not want to drink a lot of water because it's inconvenient to be getting up, especially if you have to crawl over several people in order to get to the lavatory. So they just don't drink. That's a dangerous practice, especially if you're over the age of 50 or if you're prone to phlebitis or thrombophlebitis. Wear loose clothing. And if you're especially prone to phlebitis in the legs, you should wear elastic stockings. Now, the best kind of elastic stockings are not those that you get at a brace shop, in my opinion. But I think that patients that I have treated have done much better with simple support hose from a hosiery department or a department store. Then avoid gas-forming foods and tight bands around the waist, and drink generous quantities of water, and I emphasized water. Water will cleanse your blood better than any other beverage. Certainly do not take alcoholic beverages on a long trip. Eat carrots and other deep yellow vegetables for stroke prevention. And of course, as with every disease that we have ever worked with, a totally vegetarian diet, the vegan diet, is the most favorable. There is no disease that I can name that we have not found that the totally vegan diet is the most favorable for that disease. And so we recommend that heartily. And avoid overwork and stress, coffee, tea, colas. And we've talked about the rest of these. Some things that overeating does for us. Since all food contains sodium, unless it is extremely refined food, sodium cuts down on brain hormones. Potassium, which is also present in almost all foods, if we overeat, just the very fact of overeating puts a lot of potassium in the blood. Fats cause an actual clumping together of red blood cells. Free fats, margarine, mayonnaise, fried foods, cooking fats, salad oils, even nut butters, all the free fats. What about fats as in avocado and olives and nuts and grains? No, those are not involved in this matter of clumping of red blood cells. Interesting feature about that. And again, I wish we had a long time that we could develop the matter of free fats, those I've just mentioned, and those that are combined, like combined with the fats along with the proteins and carbohydrates and vitamin and mineral complexes. When those fats reach the duodenum from the stomach, first part of the small bowel after the stomach, an address label is stamped on the fat in the duodenum to tell it where to get off. Many molecules have an address label put on them, like iodine gets off in the thyroid, iron gets off in the bone marrow or the spleen, and many nutrients get an address label. Fat is one that gets an address label. Where does the combined fat with protein, carbohydrates, and vitamin and mineral complexes, where does it have its address label to get off? Well, it's in the muscles or in the liver or in other places that we can deal with fat. What about the free fats? They get an address label too. Where are they told to get off? At your hips, on your waist, in your blood vessels, just where we don't want them to. So we need to be careful on that subject of fats. And of course, if there are clumps of red blood cells in small capillaries, that will shut off the blood supply so that we don't get as well nourished in our tissues. Sugars, proteins, and minerals, which are also present in foods and will get in the blood if we overeat, these make the blood too thick to flow readily. The overworked stomach in overeating drains energy from the brain and from other organs. And of course the partial or incomplete digestion produces some substances that are toxic. And I'd like just to tell you about some research. It isn't confirmed yet, and it's not highly specific, but it has to do with an abnormal protein produced by overeating and produced by not chewing well enough. The protein is somewhat similar to the protein of Alzheimer's disease, the amyloid that deposits in nerve cells. And I suspect that future research may show that there is a relationship between overeating and poor chewing and things of this nature, and or other bad eating habits like drinking too much fluid with one's meal, eating too great a variety, eating off schedule, and other things that make abnormal digestion, that these will prove to be a part of the Alzheimer syndrome. Then the uncomfortable colon distracts the mind from higher purposes, which of course we don't like. And here is one of my very favorite things to discuss, and that is what is it that in natural sources would give us some anticoagulation effects. And the very first one there that you see is red clover. You will see that it has coumarins in it, and the coumarins, this word, this chemical nutrient is very similar to dicoumarol, which is an anti-clotting drug. Turmeric has curcumin in it, which has a slight anticoagulation effect. Garlic has allicin, a very nice anticoagulant effect. And parsley, exercise has endorphins, free fats. We've talked about the clumping of red blood cells, but platelets are also made more sticky by a high-fat diet, less sticky by exercise. Water and a low hemoglobin, we've mentioned that, and there are some herbs that have anti-clotting agencies, flax and ginkgo, hawthorn, astragalus, and several others. But the one that is my very favorite is this last one. See that? Red grape juice. Just 5 ounces, a couple of times a day, will give you more anticoagulant effectiveness than aspirin. Studies that were done showing or contrasting grape juice and aspirin showed the edge to be on the grape juice and not on the aspirin. And it's far more pleasant to take, and it has no side effects at all. Doesn't even cost as much as aspirin, does it? And so you just drink this twice a day, 5 ounces, a couple of times a day, and you're given 24-hour-a-day protection. I can recommend that. I don't recommend aspirin. You folks ask hard questions. And I'm not certain that I know the full answer to that. More than I fear the effect on the human body of fruits and vegetables that have been genetically engineered, I fear what is going to happen to our world, to our plant world. Some of these genetically engineered fruits and vegetables have certain genes built into them that can be what would be the word, contaminated with other fruits, with the ovaries of other plants than the ones that were genetically engineered, and they become a part of the ecology. What will happen to our trees if their seeds are genetically engineered so that they cannot reproduce? And that is what does happen to certain patented seeds that have been genetically engineered. Just on the face of it, I have a fear for our future. I wish we weren't doing that. The question is concerning starches. Do you mean the whole whole gamut of carbohydrates, and not just the purified starches. And you have trouble digesting them, and is there something that can be done? Okay. Probably what is happening, if you get nasal congestion from foods that are high in carbohydrates, such as grains, it is probably not the carbohydrate per se, but is something about the grain itself, such as in wheat, gluten is far more likely to cause you to have a stuffy nose or any other kind of sensitivity or allergic reaction than is the carbohydrate part, which we generally digest and handle very well. Even some of the mineral complexes can be more likely to be a problem than the starch or the carbohydrate problem, portion. So if you have certain grains that you know cause you to have a sensitivity, let me recommend to you that you get a list of all the grains that are available and eliminate, say, half of them and only take the other half. And the ones that I would recommend, if you do it that way, are the gluten grains. Gluten grains are wheat, barley, oats, and rye. That would leave you only 3: rice, corn, and millet. Now you can have certain other high carbohydrate foods that act in the diet somewhat like grains, such as amaranth or quinoa and some others. Even some of the tubers can be properly used, such as sweet potatoes or the South American yams. Those can be used in similar ways to the use of the grains. And then, if your symptoms go away with the elimination of those grains, then you know you're sensitive to one of them, or maybe more. So then you start adding them back, one every 5 to 7 days, until your symptoms come back, and then at that time you can begin to make a list of all those foods to which you're sensitive, and there may be many. But you probably won't be allergic to all of the grains. My husband and I will be happy to answer your questions individually if you would like to come up after we dismiss. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Dr. Thrash. As always, it was just so inspiring. I'm inspired again. Let's see, I'd like to thank Dr. Carl Seth over there, who has arranged for our speaker for this evening, Bill Harris, who you can see all the work that he's gone through, and Jerry Smith over at the table, who has set up the table, brought the books and other materials from our office, Robert and Jeannie Moses, who have not only set up the room, but I think brought us iced herb tea to drink. So after the meeting, over at the kitchen area, we'll have tea. Just go over there and help yourselves. And again, come up to any of us to ask your questions and look at our books. Thank you so much.
This program is brought to you by the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, a nonprofit organization dedicated to sharing with the community the many benefits of a vegetarian diet. 3 monthly meetings include vegetarian experts found locally and on the mainland, quick and easy cooking demonstrations, and healthful and delicious food samples. Members enjoy an informative quarterly newsletter, social activities, and discounts at many vegetarian-friendly restaurants and health food stores. For an application, call 944-8344. That's 944-8344. Or visit our website at www.vsh.org. vsh.org.